Hello, everybody. My name is Tyler Russo, and this is the KO Podcast, episode number 18. In this episode, I will be reviewing UFC 280 with a very special guest, Hannah Rose. Very excited to talk about that card with her. And also, I will be previewing UFC Fight Night, Cater vs. Allen, and also Bellator is this weekend. So very excited to get this episode underway. Ring that bell. All right, I am here with Hannah Rose, aka Miss MMA Casual on Twitter and Instagram, and we are here to talk about UFC 280. I'm just gonna give a little bit of my thoughts first on the overall card and kind of the mood of the card, and then Hannah will have her thoughts. So just first off, a lot of hype going into this card. There was a lot of questions, and obviously they have been answered, maybe not in the best ways. You know, that co-main event was pretty disappointing. We'll get to that. But overall, at many points of this card, especially the prelims, I was like, oh, well, this card will get better, right? And I mean, there was moments, but no huge finishes really for us to grab at. There were a lot of big moments, but they didn't necessarily lead to finishes. And I also think that the reason why this card, I feel, kind of had that sluggish feel was there was a lot of grappling heavy fights in this card. And Hannah, thank you for coming on and talking about UFC 280 with me. What were your thoughts overall on the event?
So I kind of feel the same way as you. First of all, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course.
It's a great card to talk over. There was a lot of crazy situations that happened on the card. The main card, I definitely think, took the cake in comparison to the prelims. I enjoyed the prelims. I always enjoy the fights. As you were saying, I think it's more of like a wrestling heavy, like non-casual enjoyer. And also I have my cat here meowing in the background, so she's just going to be a part of all my interviews.
Yeah, my cat might start meowing too, so maybe they're talking MMA, who knows.
Exactly, I think they are. She gets real vocal when I'm on these things. But the prelims I still enjoyed, but I was definitely feeling the same way, waiting for a finish. And yeah, I enjoyed the prelims moderately. Well, I had a couple drinks, and then by the time main card rolled around, it definitely delivered, I'd say. Other than that co-main event, obviously, that was kind of a bummer. But I think every other fight on that card was pretty good on the main. Mm-hmm. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and a fight that I would like to highlight is the flyweight fight with Muhammad Mokaev getting that crazy submission against Malcolm Gordon, who really came on strong in this fight. I mean, he suplexed Mokaev. I've never seen anyone really do that, and he's
with his back,
yeah, and so Mokaev was put in situations that we've never seen him in before, and he faced a lot of adversity, and he fought through it, and he ended up getting a crazy armbar submission at the end. It looked like it was going to go to a decision, but I think Mokaev, I think his stock rises a pretty good amount because he showed that, you know, he can fight through the fire when it's hottest.
Yeah, I completely agree. A lot of people may criticize that win and say, well, he almost got finished in, I believe it was the second round. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think that that's the way that you should look at it. He's super young. He's early in his career, although he's been fighting forever. He's early in his UFC career. And I think it was necessary for him to get that kind of like grind it out, face the adversity, and then go on to secure the win. I think it was a super good performance on his end, and as well as Gordon. He killed it. He crushed it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Malcolm Gordon's not a pushover. He's a UFC vet. So I wasn't really, it wasn't really a negative for me that he got tested.
Agree. I completely agree with you. She agrees too, my cat.
And moving on to another fight that I wanted to highlight, still on the prelims, we had Volkan Ozdemir taking on Nikita Krylov. I thought this fight was only going to last 30 seconds because Krylov is such a fast starter, and we've kind of seen Ozdemir get finished before. But it was a back and forth fight, I would say. but Krylov ended up getting the decision. Um, where do you really see Krylov in this division? Because he came off coming into this fight, he cruised by Gustafson. Like I didn't think that was gonna happen, but he impressed me with that, and now he gets another victory here. So it's two in a row. So I mean, I don't really know where to put him in this light heavyweight division. I feel it's a little like I don't know. I feel like ever since John Jones left, it's the division's been like mucked up a little bit, and the belt's
Yeah,
changed hands a lot.
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say as well. I think it's nice to have a contender like Krylov, or a prospect, I guess you could say. He's been doing really well in the division. But what's next for him? I don't. Is he ranked? He's ranked in the
I think
top
he
10,
was he
correct?
was ranked number 10, and Ozdemir was 8, I believe, going into that
Yeah,
fight. So he's
yeah,
definitely like at 8 or 7 at this point.
yeah. I'd like to see him in a top 5 fight. I think he can handle himself really well. That fight was back and forth, but he's got good cardio. He's continued to push the pace. So I don't know. I'd like to see him get like a bigger test next time in the top 5. I need to pull up the rankings to really like give you a name here,
Hmm.
but yeah, just somebody in the top 5. I think he's definitely earned his shot up there, and he can hang with those guys.
Hmm. And I also just want to touch on Caio Bahaio real quick. I mean,
Yeah,
he's made an impact immediately. I've watched him since his Contender Series fight.
yeah,
And I think it's like with that Contender Series, I think that's like 3 fights, right?
yep,
And he's impressed me in every fight. And I know he's getting mostly decision wins, but it's because I think it's just because he's fighting so smart and so
yeah,
technical. Um, but he's just a guy in the middleweight division that if he can get ranked, I think he could really shake up the division. He's very well rounded, and he's kind of got that karate stance, which I
hmm
really like. It's like an open stance. But he also has a really strong jiu-jitsu game on the ground as well.
yeah. I love his energy. I've always loved his
Yes.
energy since the first time I saw him fight. I just love how he comes in with all that confidence. You can tell it's like oozing off of him, and I think it helps him in those fights, especially when he does go to decision. He's got to keep that mindset strong, and I think we've seen that from him. I think he'll probably do very well in the future in that division. But
I mean,
yeah, I like
he's called the natural, so
it shows.
so
I think it shows.
it seems like everything it comes natural to him, and he's just very like with the flow, and you can see that in his karate stance because that's what it is. It's a flow stance, but
Hmm.
he just has to watch out that he doesn't have his chin up because
Yeah, he
he will
does.
get clipped when he starts to get into that top 15. I'm not sure what his opponent's rankings were, but even top 20 in the UFC, it's a whole
Hmm.
different ball game once you get into those elite contenders.
And he does tend to fight with his hands down too, like the karate stance. I've noticed that, but he's quick. He's pretty fast for his weight class.
Yes, he is. He's very on his toes.
Hmm.
And then probably the most entertaining fight of the night, kind of surprisingly, is was the prelim main event with Bahal Muhammad and Sean Brady. I kind of said this on the last episode when I was previewing this card. I said I wouldn't be surprised if this was a stand-up battle just because both guys are such elite grapplers just all over. And this was a very, very fun fight. And I think we saw a side of Banal Bahamid that we haven't seen before. Uh, I feel like that's the most like I don't know if it was damage, but punches I would say that he's taken. Like, yeah, he did
Yeah,
get finished by Luque, but that was more of a one punch, lights out kind of flash knockout.
right. Yeah,
But he showed his toughness and grit. But yeah, I thought yeah, he showed a different side of him, and he showed that he has hands. We
yeah. I
haven't
think
really seen that.
yeah, he's definitely improved his stand-up game. I think that happens often, like when you put two grapplers against each other. We hear it all the time. Like it's going to end up on the feet. It's going to be a striking battle. But you know how strong Brady is. I've heard from many of his training partners and guys that have just trained with him outside of his gym say that he is like the strongest person that they've ever trained with and grappled with. So it's pretty impressive that he was able to avoid those takedowns and then keep the fight on the feet and have the advantage there. Because a lot of people were saying that Brady had an advantage in the hands as well. or in the power at least. So I think we saw his technique and ability to switch up the game plan. And I think he did a great job. It was a
Yeah.
very impressive performance.
Yeah.
I was like, I've always been
I
a
was,
Bilal fan.
yeah. I mean, because
So
he's a nice guy and he's funny on Twitter.
he is.
So I've came to like him that way. But I was very pleasantly surprised by that. And also, the only thing that I'll say that I noticed is, although Muhammad he was getting through on those shots, he was kind of really just throwing a 1-2 and then like a overhand left,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
they were getting through, but you know, I don't know if that's going to cause him more problems. He has to kind of open up his arsenal with striking a little bit more if he wants to stay
Right.
standing. I don't
Right.
know if that was the plan going in or if he got punched in the face a couple times and just was like, "Screw it, I'm just gonna stand with him."
Right. Yeah.
Or maybe it was he didn't want to get too tired trying to bring Brady down because, as you said, he's super strong.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, this got fight in the night, so congrats to both guys. And
This was
what'd you think about the stoppage? You think it was the right?
um, you know, I think that it may have looked like he wasn't hurt, but he wasn't defending himself, and that's the
He
rule. If
was
you're
hurt.
not defending, then
He was out on his feet. You could see it
yeah,
in his eyes. Like
done. Yeah.
he's it's it's like those are some of the most brutal when like their body does not know how to give because their will is so strong. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we've seen it with like Frank Mir when he did that triad thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And of
That was
course
scary.
he's got
That's like
he's
years of not wanting to quit.
yeah, yeah, and you can tell there's certain fighters that just have that in him, and Sean Brady obviously never being finished. I know he has that in him, and it shows. He's got quite the chin as well. He was taking like some pretty heavy
Yeah, and
shots
he
from
was
below.
standing there. His legs were like kind of solid, but his torso and everything else was like
Yeah,
kind of out of sync. So I mean, I thought it was a good stoppage.
yeah. Why
Then
take more damage than you need to? I think it was a good
yeah,
stoppage as
and
well.
plus he's still young.
Young, yeah,
He's
exactly.
got a really long career hopefully ahead of him.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think we'll see a great future from Brady still. I mean, Bilal seems to be on a roll, and I'm not sure who's going to stop that. So
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was good.
yeah. Then we kicked off the main card with Caitlin Chorgigian and Moran Farhat. Uh, and I don't know this fight. Uh,
It was
I don't know.
close.
It was close. I just expected maybe Farhat to have some more forward movement. But
Yeah.
I know Kanjian, she's also, you know, a forward moving fighter.
Mm-hmm.
But Farhat, I mean, I've seen her other fights. She's very aggressive. You know, she's not afraid to come forward and throw her hands, which I really like about her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I just feel like this fight was kind of about both of them fighting for octagon control, I feel. Like it
Yeah.
was almost who wanted to lead the dance more. And
Yeah.
it ended up being Farhat with the
Yeah.
decision win.
Yeah. That was the fight that broke my parlay. I was on a roll. I had gotten 7 fights right. And I just thought Shikagian, the experience, she seems to be always at the top of that
She
division,
was
like
on a 4-fight
regardless.
win streak.
Exactly. She's been on a roll lately. And I don't know, her kicks were landing really well in that first round. I expected her to use those a little bit more. I don't know if she was worried about the grappling of Furo, but I wouldn't really think that because Furo's more of the power puncher and she's more of the grappler. So I was kind of expecting her to mix that into her game and maybe try a takedown, attempt a takedown, throw some more kicks, like mix it up a little bit better. But it seemed like she was allowing Minnow to kind of lead the dance and adjusting to it. And her corner just wasn't giving the energy that I was needing. I'm like, come on, gotta tell her to go because it was a good matchup. She had a good chance of
Yeah,
winning
yeah.
that fight.
I think she was a little bit on cruise control at some points.
Exactly.
And she
Yeah,
maybe needed
definitely.
that kick in the butt in the corner to kind of get her into gear.
I got you,
Um,
girl. Caitlin, if you're listening.
and then we had a pretty interesting lightweight matchup. We had Manel Dariush taking on Martine Gamarot.
Love that
Um,
fight. Yeah.
this was a really good fight. This was the fight that had probably the most big moments and just didn't get the finish materialized. But again,
Yeah.
I think a lot of these fights on this card were they were so well matched up to each
Match.
other
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that it was maybe a detriment to the entertainment value, I guess. At least we didn't see
Right.
as many finishes, but um Dariush, I think it was the third round, that punch.
Ooh, that
That punch
left,
was so loud. And Gamrot
that was
just
insane.
rolls on his back and then starts wrestling or gets up. It's like, how do
Yeah,
you take that to the chin? His chin was wide open.
yeah, he could. I don't think that like almost any other person in that division could have survived what Beneil was putting him through. Not only it had to have been discouraging, like he could not get Beneil down, but he's got that grit in him. He just keeps going and incredible cardio. I think we're going to see a great future from him as well. It's still pretty early in his UFC career,
Yeah, he's only
but
20. He's only 21-2 with that
yeah,
loss.
yeah.
So, I mean, that's an amazing record.
And the
Um,
loss before that, it was controversial. I remember people thought that he had won that fight. So
yeah, was it a split? Was it a split
it was,
decision?
yeah, it was a split decision.
Mm.
I can't remember.
That was
It was
like
another
his first or
prospect.
second fight in the UFC, right?
Yeah, yeah, it
Yeah, it
was.
was
I think it
very
was his
early.
second. Mm-hmm.
He's climbed the top so quick. So
Exactly.
again,
Yeah.
like, if he's not going to get discouraged.
Yeah. You got to give it to Beneil for always taking these opponents on. And like,
Yeah,
he
and he
was
didn't
the
even
underdog
call.
in
He
this
didn't even
fight.
call his shot at the end. He was like, "I'll fight 10 more times for the belt." I was like, "Well, you don't have to do that to
No.
yourself. You can call someone
Yeah.
out. It's okay." I
Right.
mean, like,
And then Twitter will do it for him.
yeah. I mean, he's one of those guys that I think, he said he's not a beggar, which I can respect, but also like, you know,
Somewhere in
you
the
gotta you
middle. Let's
you,
meet
you
somewhere in
gotta
the
be
middle.
you gotta be loud at points, to get your point
Especially
across.
now in the UFC.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and the lightweight division, it's pretty wide open right now. I mean, we'll get to
Yeah.
the main event, but it's pretty wide open.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, Beno was throwing just ridiculous shots. Like, just
Yeah. His striking has
you could tell
improved.
that he was just like throwing everything into a lot of the power shots, and I think that's why that punch was so loud. But I
Uh-huh.
mean, you've seen Beneil brutally knock out people with spinning back fist, and Jakar Close, that fight was crazy. So it's not
Yeah.
like he's not an exciting fighter. It's just that I think Gamrot is just so tough and took so much.
Yeah, he is so hard to put away. He's relentless. That is the word that I have for Gamrot.
Yeah,
Relentless.
definitely. And this is probably one of the most controversial fights of the night. We had Peter Yan taking on Sean O'Malley. When this fight got announced, I have to be honest, I thought that it was fake. On Twitter,
Did you?
because there's a lot of fake
Yeah.
things on Twitter. I've almost gotten caught retweeting things, but luckily I realized
I
before. Always have to check your sources.
mm-hmm. I learned
Um,
that.
but yeah, and I just think that first round was really the ultimate kind of that was the main round that probably counted the most, because I feel like O'Malley came on stronger and stronger as that fight went. Although he did get popped with a lot of shots and he was also really hurt, but
Mm-hmm.
both guys both guys were really tough though. I mean, because they were throwing shots at each other and they were still I don't know if anyone knocked anyone down, but they would get hurt and then they would just go into a grappling exchange,
Yeah.
and Sean was rolling all over the mat. So he showed that he had a pretty decent ground game, at least defensively. And I
Yeah.
think he even went for a takedown. And I don't know if he got it, but he went for a take. I saw that
Yeah.
and I was like, is that the
Mm-hmm.
first time ever that Sean O'Malley's gone for a takedown?
Uh-huh. Yeah, he did. It was interesting to see Jan kind of be forced into
Yeah,
those positions and
yeah, he was
into
panic
having to
wrestling.
adjust. Yeah, and we've
Um,
heard that Piotr has good grappling, so I wasn't too surprised to see it. I think that that was his keys to victory is to mix the two together because he's got amazing technical striking, but he is a shorter fighter. That's always going to be like an advantage on Sean. He's super long for that division, pretty tall for that division,
how does he
and
cut the
he's so
weight?
quick.
How does he cut the weight?
I don't know how he does it because he gets pretty like beefy in
He's like,
between
I
fight
think,
camp.
I don't know. I think one time on Twitter, he said he was like maybe like in the 150s
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something like
it's
that. So he must have a
mm-hmm,
very strict diet when he gets close to camp. I think that's kind of one of the big things now in modern MMA. A lot of it is eating and what
in
you're putting in your
between.
body, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to rely solely on weight cutting, because then you'll be like Johnny Hendricks and not be able to make any weight at all later in your career. So
Lad. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a whole nother story.
I know. We
But
don't
she's
have to
with the
get into that.
PFL, so she can fight at 145, 155. She's got
Perfect.
options there. I
Hmm.
mean, I would like to see her and Kayla Harrison. That's just my
I
honest
would too.
opinion. Why
I
not
would,
run it after the playoffs? Kayla Harrison's probably gonna win.
I think the Bud matchup is pretty good as well.
I
But
was, and Kayla Harrison was supposed to fight Julia Budd last
it was, yeah.
season, and I was like, yes, finally, like someone that's a former champion.
Hmm.
Then it didn't end up materializing, but
Yeah.
that's kind of MMA. Hey,
The game. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Um, and then also, Sean, I don't know if it was the second or third round, but he cut Jan open really bad.
Yeah,
I don't know what it was with. Was it with a punch or an elbow? I can't remember.
I think it was an elbow. I think it was
Yeah,
an elbow.
yeah, it was like all down here, and that's the most damaged I've seen Jan. So
Yeah,
like, whether you think Sean won the fight or not, I think everyone can say that he's proven that he's belongs in the top five.
I
Because he
agree.
went from number 11 and he fought number one. I mean, you don't see that a lot.
Yeah,
That's like I probably the last person to really jump that high is like Connor, most
definitely.
likely
Yeah,
back in his run.
in
Um,
16. Yeah.
yeah, but I would when those cards were being read, I thought truly I thought Jan had it.
So did I. Yeah.
But I mean, even O'Malley, I feel was, his
Not
face. He
sure.
was like, I
Yeah.
was close. He wasn't his usual like, calling
Confident.
out
Yeah.
people, blah blah
Hmm.
blah. Yeah, but then the co-main event, uh, we had Aljamain Sterling defending his bantamweight championship against two-time former bantamweight champ TJ Dillashaw, and it he well, okay, let's talk about the fight first. And then we'll talk about kind of the aftermath. So first round going blah blah blah, and then all of a sudden TJ looks injured and his shoulders popped out. He survives the whole first round somehow with one arm. Uh then he gets to the second and it pops out again, and then he kind of just gets caught in a body triangle. And when
Hmm.
Aljamain's on your back, he's gonna finish you, whether it's striking or
Agreed.
whether
Yeah.
it's with uh you know submissions.
Yeah.
Um, but I think the real story is really about what happened going into this fight. Um, TJ Dillashaw apparently blew out his shoulder in April.
Yeah.
April, that's a long time ago. He didn't want to wait the year. Uh, and he came in compromised, and apparently nobody realized it. I don't know. The doctors didn't realize it. So I don't
And
know. It was very disappointing. And I can understand from the fighter's perspective. You pay a lot for the training and your training partners, and you put a lot of time and effort into it, and you never really know when your next opportunity is going to be, especially for a title. But from a fan perspective, it was a little, I don't know. It was let he kind of let us down. I feel
yeah.
he wasn't going in with his best foot forward.
Yeah. And I think it's hard to expect a fighter who's relying on a paycheck and relying on that shot at the title and just taking advantage of the opportunity. I think it's kind of hard for him to put his pride aside, but I do think that, his camp should have stepped in. If the UFC doctors had noticed anything, I think that they should have stepped in. But we've, notoriously, Michael Bisping, his eye, we've
Yeah,
definitely
fighting
heard
with
of the
one eye for
doctors.
like 3 4 years. That's
Yeah.
insane. He just
So
guessed and got it right. I guess I don't
you
know.
can trick them apparently, but I was a little bit disappointed. I did think that Aljamain was going to win, like
Yeah,
regardless of the injury or
especially
not.
like his last couple of fights. His I mean, he takes your back and you're not going anywhere.
He's
He's
very
so
strong.
good.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
he's pretty big for that
Oh
division as
yeah,
well.
definitely, definitely.
So I definitely
And he
think
was
that
in great shape too, very shredded. He looked like he was ready to go. So I don't think that the TJ injury should take anything away from this victory.
yeah,
I think that this is Aljamain's gone through too much of disrespect from people,
I
and
agree. I was listening to the John Anik and Kenny Florian podcast, and they were speaking about, I guess, TJ Dillashaw. He had told Mark Goddard in the back like 30
yeah,
minutes
yeah, he
before the
did.
fight about the
And I was
injury.
it was like,
Wild, right?
I don't
He
know.
said, it's gonna pop out. I know it's gonna pop out.
Just let me pop it back in. That's how crazy MMA fighters are. So
It is crazy. It's kind of reminiscent of Aaron Pico at Bellator maybe a month ago.
I
I
was
don't know
just
if you
gonna,
saw that fight,
I was just,
but
yeah, I did see that. I was just gonna bring that up. The only difference is it happened during the fight, not
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
pre-existing.
Yeah.
But they couldn't pop it back in. His arm was like a noodle. It
And
was
I think
gross.
I believe his corner like ended up breaking his clavicle by
I
pushing it back in like
wouldn't
that.
be surprised. They were literally like
Aggressive.
that.
It was
Yeah.
aggressive.
And he was like
Yeah.
this, like, and I
That's
was
why
like,
the sport, you just have to respect the athletes in the sport, regardless of how you
yeah.
feel about them personally.
Yeah,
I
that's
think,
why I always try to separate the person from the fighter,
yeah,
because
totally.
there are some fighters that are pretty dislikable people, but really good
Definitely.
fighters.
Yeah,
That's in every profession though.
exactly.
Um, and then the main event, I was really excited for this. I picked Charles to win. Um,
We can share
unfor-
this pain.
yeah, unfortunately, Islam Makhachev is just super, super strong, and
Honestly.
yeah, he submitted him in the second round. What submission did he get locked on? And was like a front choke, or was it
I believe it was an arm triangle.
yeah, it was. But I mean, if you looked at like Islam Makhachev's like back, it's like all just huge muscles just popping
Muscle.
out.
Yeah.
So I mean, I wouldn't want to get squeezed by him either.
Yeah. And it's kind of thinking back to Connor versus Habib and how that was more of like a grind on the chin and not
Yeah, it
so much
was a
under
neck.
the
I
chin.
think it was like a neck crank.
Frank, yeah, it was.
And it
He's
wasn't locked
got,
in, but
right. It's just the strength of them. They're so
yeah.
strong. They're
I mean,
so dominant.
he would have broke Connor's jaw probably if he didn't tap.
Definitely. Yeah. I think so. That's what it looked like was gonna happen. But yeah, he's impressive. I was a huge and still am a huge fan of Habib. So
Hmm.
I don't know what it was for me. I'm just maybe I was like, no, there's no way that he's gonna be as good as him.
I
I
thought the
think he's like
stand up would be the biggest thing, but
the
Makachev
difference.
stand up,
Yeah.
and I said that don't underestimate his stand up, kind of like Habib showed when he uh knocked down
Nation.
Connor. Well, it didn't. I don't think it
Connor
necessarily
too.
counted as a knockdown,
Yeah.
but it's a knockdown because they look like a knockdown. But that overhand was beautiful that Khabib threw. So obviously, a lot of the tools that Khabib has, he's passed it to Makachev. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
they obviously both had Khabib's father teaching them before he passed away. But
Mm-hmm.
what a storyline like it's become, as Khabib is just like this crazy, really good coach now. Like he's coaching so many people. I mean, he's almost
Like a
as much
movie.
he's almost as like Mike Brown with American Top Team. Like he's in
Yeah.
everyone's corner now. Khabib's in everyone's corner. I mean, it's nice to
Mm-hmm.
see that though. I like to see that fighters like to stay close to the
Evolved to
sport.
that. And even like fighters like Brian Ortega were calling on Twitter to be coached by Habib after that. It just
Yeah.
shows how good of a coach he is.
And he
And
cares really too.
exactly, he was a fighter at the top,
Yeah.
like the top of the top, pound for
Mhm.
pound. So if anybody knows from experience, it's Habib. If I was a fighter, I would be honored
Well,
to
he
be
was
taught by.
in Benel Muhammad's corner.
Yeah, he
So
was.
who
Yeah,
knows? I mean, it's just having that championship experience. I think a lot of people underestimate that just because they're not a fighter anymore. But I mean, it's just
I
the
agree.
mentality, really, that takes
I
years to
agree.
grow.
Yeah.
And not everybody has that right away. I don't even think Khabib had that right away, but his father instilled it in him so young that now
Mm-hmm.
it's just like that's how he lives his life, which is
And
crazy.
then coming from Dagestan and that story that he's got, it's got to give you like motivation as a fighter. And
Yeah,
I
it's
think a lot of people
coming
like
from nothing all the way
exactly.
to
So he's got that.
championship and everything that he's done at AKA and all that. I mean, he's still there all the time, still training
Hmm.
everybody.
Yeah,
And he's got a lot of family members as well. So I mean, Nurmagomedov, that last name is not going anywhere. There's still going to be a
nope.
bunch of guys with that last name.
Etched in history for
Yep.
sure. Yeah.
Um, but I I don't I wasn't surprised that Charles got knocked down. I don't know.
You expect
He
this.
seemed a little bit too accepting of it though.
Yeah, I think
Like when
that.
I think he might have only gotten knocked down once in this fight.
Yeah, it
And
was
and
once, and then
and it was the finishing
that
sequence.
was
And at
it.
that point he got knocked down. He's like, okay, I don't feel well. Let me just kind of lay back into my guard. But Makachev, the difference is he wasn't scared.
Yeah,
So,
that is what it seems. And just their style of wrestling, it's so suffocating. It's really hard to create that space to secure the submission or even try to secure the submission. And that wrist control that they have, just every that
oh my God,
what is it?
yeah.
The grip that the
Yeah.
Dagestani like grip.
Yeah, right on
They
your
just
wrist, so you can't try to mount
what are
yourself
you gonna
up a
do?
little bit. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
trapped, and they're just, if anything, they'll just lay on you, and you'll tap because you're suffocating.
exactly. That's the strength of
Yeah, like
them.
if they really
I
were
wish.
lazy, yeah, yeah. Like
And
even if Khabib
we're
shook my
so
hand, I would be like, all right, that was a
ouch.
little
No.
hard.
We're so used to seeing Charles deal with adversity. And so I knew when he got, or I thought that when he got knocked down, I was like, okay, this is it. I'm telling my friends, this is where he comes back and he gets the belt every time. Look
Just
at what
didn't happen
happened.
that
But
time.
I think Charles is absolutely the second best in the world. He's one of the best grapplers I've ever seen personally in MMA at least.
Hmm.
So I don't know what's next for him. I hope he gets that money fight. Maybe Beneil, if Beneil doesn't get that title, if they're doing Volk versus Islam.
Yeah, that's
But
interesting that they're kind of just jumping right to that. I mean, I understand from Volk's point, I think he deserves that shot, but it's like you just got a new champion. Like, are we gonna do like Eddie Alvarez thing where it's like he's champion for a
exactly.
blip, but then
Right.
Conor McGregor's? I mean, I don't think Volk would ever do what Conor McGregor did and just abandon two divisions and leave them
No,
both
yeah.
dry.
He's active. He's super
Yeah,
active.
he's very active, and that's like one of the things I respect about Volk because
So, yeah.
a lot of people when they become champ, they fight like once or twice a year. And
Yeah,
he's
exactly.
fighting like 3 times a year.
Yeah, in
Um,
different divisions. He's fighting all the best in that
and
division.
he also was the backup fighter for this. So,
Yeah, impressive. Made
uh,
weight.
yeah, so he's proving that he wants it. So I
True.
mean, he should go get it, but I would like Makachev to kind of fight another lightweight,
Yeah, I
kind of
can't
keep the
really,
division moving.
especially with how strong he is to fight somebody that's a weight class under him. It just doesn't seem that exciting for me. Name wise, of course, it's a huge fight, but there's people like Yair Rodriguez, other Sanhagen, and other fighters in the 145 division making their way back up, and I just feel like he should maybe lap a couple people in that division first, like Yair, and maybe give them
Yeah,
a shot
well,
before
it
going
sucks
for
that
that.
Yair and Ortega fight ended the way it did because we would have a little bit more clarity, I believe. Well, thank you for taking the time to go over this card. Uh, there's a lot of pretty good fights this weekend, so I'll definitely be live tweeting if I can those fights, giving some quick thoughts on Twitter. Obviously, you're always active on Twitter, so definitely be looking for your tweets
Yes.
and seeing how you kind of see how this card plays out. So thank you for taking the time for going over with UFC 280 with me. Uh, I had a lot of fun. I don't know about you, but
Same, same. We went over the first scheduled Zoom time, so I think we did well today. Thank you for
yeah.
having me. I appreciate it. And yes, I will be on Twitter this weekend live tweeting as I always do, regardless of whether there's a fight card or not. You'll see me there. So thank you for having me.
Now let's move on to UFC Fight Night, Cater versus Allen. The card before UFC 280, I referred to it as an appetizer. So let's refer to this card as the dessert to after UFC 280. So there are a couple of prelim fights I want to highlight. So let's go over them right now. Featherweight, we have Chase Hooper taking on Steve Garcia. We have a middleweight bout between Joseph Holmes and Park Jun Young. And we have a heavyweight matchup between UFC veteran Andre Orlovsky taking on Marcos Rodrigo de Lama. That should be a fun fight. It's always fun with the heavyweights. And of course, we have in the prelim final, we have Phil Hawes taking on Roman Dolozzi. That also should be a pretty fun prelim fight. Now, let's get to the main card. Kicking it off, we have a light heavyweight bout. We got Dustin Jacoby taking on Khalil Roundtree. This fight is gonna be a striker's affair. I can just see it. Both of these guys have strong kickboxing, and I just feel that this fight is going to be very, very entertaining. And, I expect to finish in this fight. Dustin Jacoby, he's been on a roll. And Khalil Roundtree, he's just vicious. So I cannot wait for this fight. This is a really good fight to start off the card. Moving on, we have a middleweight bout. We got Josh Fremd taking on Tresean Gore. Now, Tresean Gore, in his tough season, he was a finalist but had to withdraw from the final because of injury. And since then, he's gone 0-2 in the UFC. He's really struggled. And he definitely needs a win in this matchup. So, I'm very curious to see if he makes any big adjustments to his game plan, because again, he really needs a win here. Moving on, we have a heavyweight bout. We got Waldo Cortez Acosta taking on Jared Vanderaa. Acosta's only 7-0. I believe let me check here. I believe he came from Dana White's Contender Series. Yes, he did. He just this past summer, he got a first round finish, so that's how he got his contract. So he is making his debut against Jared Vanderaa. That should be fun to see, kind of how he handles everything. In the co-main event, we have UFC vet Tim Means taking on another UFC vet, Max Griffin. This is at welterweight. Tim Means, he's been around for a very, very long time. A true vet of the sport. Then we also have, we got Max Griffin, who, in his own right, he's been around for a while. He's coming off of a loss to Neil Magny. That was back at UFC Fight Night Blades versus Dawkins. So he's had some time off. And also, if we look at Tim Means, his last fight was a loss to Kevin Holland. So both of these guys looking to get back into that win column. And now for the main event, we have Calvin Kattar taking on Arnold Allen. I am very, very excited for this matchup. I am, a huge Calvin Kattar fan. I just love the way that he fights. I love the way how he uses his striking and his elbows. His elbows are nasty. I mean, Giga Jakatsi, he just destroyed him in that fight. So Calvin Kattar, he is coming off of a pretty controversial decision loss to Josh Emmett. Personally, I thought Kattar won that fight, but it did not go his way. On the other side of this, Arnold Allen, he's coming off of a huge win against Dan Hooker. He actually got the finish in that fight. Aaron Arnold, man, he can throw. He proved that when he finished Hooker. But man, he's so talented. I mean, he's 18-1 for a reason. This is gonna be a very fun fight. I think the difference is just Calvin Kattar using those elbows. I mean, his elbows are his best weapon, and also his toughness is his best weapon as well. So we'll see if Arnold Allen can put Kattar away, because if he can finish Kattar, that's really, really impressive. I don't think that it's gonna happen. I feel like this fight, it may go to a decision, but yeah, I mean, Arnold Allen, he's 18-1. If he gets a win here, definitely he's gonna be in the short list for that featherweight title shot, I believe. Maybe he needs one more fight if he can win this one. But yeah, this main event is going to be very action-packed. Kattar's not a boring fighter at all. And, very excited for this main event. Bellator 287 is also this weekend. Let's review some of their fights. They are coming all the way from Milan, Italy. I love that Bellator continues to stay and travel internationally as much as they can. So we have a lot of prelims on this fight. A couple of fighters I just want to highlight that are going to be fighting on this prelim. Also, every Bellator prelim is free on their YouTube channel, so I highly recommend that you catch these prelims and just watch some fights for free. You know, it's always great to watch fights for free. Anyways, getting into the card, we got Simon Bayang. I believe that's how you say his last name. I apologize if I butchered it, but Simon Bayang coming off a really impressive victory in his last fight against Luke Trainer. Luke Trainer was previously undefeated before that, so definitely keep an eye on him. Kicking off Bellator 287's main card, we got a featherweight bout. We got Justin Gonzalez taking on Andrew Fisher. Then we also have Saul Rogers taking on Tim Wild in a lightweight bout. And in the co-main event, we have Fabian Edwards taking on Charlie Ward in a middleweight bout. This fight is, I don't know, it's kind of a tale of two different styles. I mean, Fabian Edwards, obviously the brother of UFC welterweight champ Leon Edwards. So you know that Fabian Edwards is going to come in very technical striking, very sharp striking. He's definitely going to use elbows, punches. You know, he's going to use his whole arsenal, and he has a lot of tools, you know, to finish a fight. You know, Edwards is coming off of his biggest career win against Lyoto Machida. He knocked him out cold. That was a very impressive win, and that put his name, you know, really out there as, you know, one of the top middleweights in Bellator. And when you take a look at Charlie Ward, he's just a brawler, man. He's a brawler who will not give up, and he's called relentless for a reason because, you know, he will chase that finish. Sometimes chasing that finish for him doesn't work out, but, you know, he's such a tough guy. But I just see Fabian Edwards winning this. I just feel like Edwards has way more tools to win, and you know, if Ward wants to win this fight, it's gonna have to be a brawl. It's gonna have to be a very, you know, drag him out fight for Ward to really to win this fight. You know, he needs to get Edwards tired. He needs to get Edwards vulnerable. So very interesting to see which style kind of wins this battle. I'm going to have to take Fabian Edwards to win this fight. Again, I just think he has the more tools. And then now, moving on to the main event, we got Adam Piccolotti taking on Monsieur Barnat. I probably butchered his last name. I apologize. So I'll call him by his first name. But Monsieur is making his Bellator debut. He is from France. He's 19-4. So I have not really seen much of any of his fights, but I'm going to be watching very closely in this main event because, hey, we could have a new player in the in the lightweight division, excuse me. Bellator's lightweight division is already stacked, and we have a huge lightweight championship bout next month in Chicago for Bellator. So I'm looking forward to that one. But back to this fight, Mansour can make a huge impact in these lightweight rankings. So, you know, very excited for this main event. Adam Piccolotti, he's been in Bellator for quite some time. So let's see if he can keep his spot in this really growing lightweight division for Bellator. A lot of big fights coming up for this division, and this is one of them. So very excited for this event. And that is going to do it for this episode of the KO podcast. Again, thank you, Hannah Rose, for stopping by and talking about UFC 280 with me. I had a great time, and can't wait to have you back on the podcast. Thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedule to listen in. Stay safe, stay blessed. Bye-bye.